Today I'm going to be talking about what is arguably the most advanced add-on for Oxygen Builder, and that is Recoda Workspace. This add-on is an absolute game changer. It has taken Oxygen Builder to an entirely new level. As a matter of fact, I find myself unable to use Oxygen without it. Like, it's so addictive, the features are rich, and this literally turns Oxygen into an absolute beast. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about by demonstrating most of the features in Recoda Workspace. It's going to be almost difficult to cover everything, but some of the most outstanding features I'm going to show you how they work. Now, this is Oxygen Builder. This is vanilla Oxygen Builder, where you have the default Oxygen 4 interface. So you can see I have a section selected and you can see the side panel. Now I'm going to go ahead and activate Recoda Workspace. Let's check out the difference. Now this is the Oxygen interface with Recoda Workspace installed. The first thing you're going to notice on the left panel is that you have extra buttons here, and these buttons are shortcuts to the advanced tabs. So instead of going into, let's say you want to change something on the background, you go in here and then you come out and go in here and then you come out, you go in here and come out. You can quickly just switch through them. So if you're inside here and you want to go to the CSS, you switch through here. If you want to go to the attributes, if you want to go back to the size and spacing. So everything is set up. Now I want to point out that I had to choose the theme I'm using. So I'm using Recoda Developer. Respect API will give you some sort of this light grayish, but I prefer Recoda Developer theme. And there are a lot of options here. Once you install it, I'm not going to go through the options that are available because you can just easily go in one by one and make a choice. But I'm going to show you the features. Now, so that is the first one. Now, the next one you're going to notice are these buttons here. These buttons are, they are responsive helpers. So you toggle responsive control where you are able to view your website on different screen sizes. You can view them on tablet, you can turn the orientation, you can even put a custom dimension here. For example, if I want to view my device at, let's say, 1025 by 600 or by 800, and then I can hit enter and I'm able to view my website on that device size. So this is really handy. So you have the most market share screen sizes already as preset, and then you have the common devices here. And if you're not satisfied with any of them, you can actually add your custom value. This is really awesome. And that's not all. Over here, you have the canvas settings. You can view your canvas at any screen size that you choose. Now, I'm going to switch over to an actual website, and then I'm going to demonstrate this to you. Now, this is an actual website I'm working on. And one of the challenges with working on websites in a builder is you never have enough room to view your website the way you want to. Recoda has one neat feature where you can quickly view the full screen by hitting the spacebar, and then by hitting the spacebar again, you close the full screen preview. Now that's not just all. So I was talking about this. Now if you are working on a website that you needed a lot of screen estate, let's say your website actual size is 144 pixel, that is your actual website size, but you need to see it on a larger screen. I can move it up to this or to 1920 screen. That gives me enough room to see everything I'm doing. Now let me take this back to the default. So I'm going to reset that. So you can see everything is closed. I can't even see the space that I'm going to have on my actual website, the extra spaces on the side. But then if I go here 1920, I can see how it's going to look, and then it gives me an idea of how my website is going to look on an actual large screen, like a 1920 screen. And then if I go up to a screen that is 250, and you can see that it gives me the option to see how wide. You may notice that I have some gray bar here, and that's because I was able to view this website on a very wide screen and decided that I have to restrict my HTML size. So if I go to the style sheet and turn off that, now this is how this website looks. So now imagine you build a website and somebody views it on an ultra wide screen. So Recoda gives me the ability to see. Now this is 3951. So someone has an ultra wide PC and you never accounted for how that website is going to look because there's just no way for you to know on your own screen. Now Recoda gives you the tools to be able to view this website at different ultra wide screen and you are able to make choices. So I was able to make a choice to limit the width of my site on any device, on any large screen. So I decided that if you're viewing my website on a large screen, I don't want you to view it wider than a specific width. And I want my maximum width to be 1920 and no more, because if it stretches all the way, it's just going to look really funny. Now, because I can see this real time, how this is going to look on a very large screen, I can go ahead to write custom CSS to enable me adjust my hero and change it from being 100% viewport height at that screen size, at any screen size up to 1920, or maybe above, maybe 1440 pixels. I can actually reduce my screen size to like say 70 VH, so that it's going to avoid it stretching all the way like this. So, and it would have been very difficult for me to be able to visualize this without using Recoda Workspace. And since we are talking about screen sizes, I'm going to quickly show you one of the features of Recoda Workspace that also has to do with screen sizes. I'll go ahead and leave this at 1920. And then, of course, you can also do it by zoom. For instance, this is 100% zoom. You can zoom it out by 60%. You can zoom it out, so you can have an overview of what you are doing. This is extremely handy. I can't imagine working without this ever again. So I'm going to reset this, and I'm going to show you what is called the responsive app. Now, the responsive app shows you a screenshot of all possible screen sizes, like the most common screen sizes and how your website looks on it. Now, and you scroll and they are syncing with each other. If I move this, of course, that moves. So the syncing is not exactly smooth, but that is not a deal breaker. But the most important thing is that I'm able to, so I can just ignore the screen that I'm not interested in, and then, of course, and focus on the one that I'm interested in. So you see the screen sizes, the device names, and of course, you see this is an iPad. This is on the different screen sizes. So now when I was working on this site, this is a small laptop. So it shows you, okay, this is how your website is going to look on a small laptop. And then this is how your website is going to look on a laptop of medium size. So you can see the difference. And then you can see how your laptop is going to look on a MacBook Pro 15. And then how it's going to look on a Retina screen. So notice how it's looking on the Retina screen. So because I have this preview, I'm able, now obviously the iMac Retina is larger than 1920, and I've already set my site width not to be larger than that. So and then of course I can take a look at this and say, okay, I have to make adjustment to my site height here. So you have this way, it shows you the full width on your own screen, and then it shows you the iMac, the big screen. It shows you the small laptop and the normal 15-inch screen. It shows you the different tablet sizes. It shows you the landscape of phone and tablet, and then it shows you the different phone sizes. You can also zoom in to these devices, or you can zoom out. This is a very powerful feature. Another feature of Recoda Workspace is the live server. Now, this is very useful, especially if you're working with two screens. So you want to have the front end of the website open on one screen, and then you want to be working on the back end. You don't want to be switching between the tabs and refreshing when you're done saving. So, and what the live server does is any changes you make here, when you save it, so if I change the color of this to say red, and then I save it, what is going to happen is the live server is going to automatically refresh, and and then you have that changes reflected here. So that's basically what the live server does. It just syncs what you're doing at the back end with the front end. So I'm just going to take that off and save it again. I'm not going to cover every single thing, but let me just cover a few of these things. The next one I want to show you is the X-ray mode. So that just gives you a wireframe of what is going on the site. So in case you just want to know where certain things begin and where they stop, it just gives you a wireframe view. And the next one gives you a grid. If you're working from, maybe you're taking your design from Figma and there's a certain grid settings that was used for the layout, this is very handy. That helps you to be able to lay out your site with the grid settings that you were given. So I'm just going to skip a few of these. Now, this is one of the most useful features. Now I'm going to go back to that blank install, and then this is open style sheet in a new tab. Now, before I demonstrate the external style sheets, I want to quickly jump to the command line interface because I want to use it to add elements to the page. Now, this is the command line interface. So, and the way you activate it is by either clicking on it or hitting the letter G. This takes working with elements and classes to a whole new level. There are a couple of shortcuts for the command line, and you can see it in the Recoda's website. Right here, there are a couple of commands that you can just take a look at. So you go to docs.recoda.me to take a look at it. Now, I'm just going to demonstrate just a few of them. Now, what I want to do, okay, let me just take this section away. So what I want to do now is to add a section with 3 cards. So I'm going to just hit G and write section, and then I want to add 3 divs. So I'm just going to hit this sign and just write div. Now I want those divs to have a class of my card, okay, my card, but I want 3 of them inside. So I'm just going to hit the multiplication operator and 3. So basically I want a section with 3 divs with the class of my card. So I'm just going to hit enter, and there you have it. So I have a section, and then I have 3 divs, and then another Recoda feature is that it brings out the classes and the IDs right here, and so I can see that I have this ID here and this classes. So you can click this to select the IDs and the class instead of just going in here to do it the normal way. So if you want to delete the class, you can just quickly delete it from here. So I'm going to quickly select the class and give it a width of 100%. And then I have that, so I want to stack this horizontally. So I have my 3 cards, which I will just give maybe some background. So let me quickly add a heading, a text, and a button there. So I'm just going to hit G to focus on the command line again. I'm just going to add H1 plus a paragraph, that is P, and then a button gives, that is a button. So I'm just going to hit that. So I have buttons inside there. Now, one other feature of Recoda is that now if you're using a framework, you are able to access those framework by just typing the name of the variable. So I'm using ACSS here, automatic CSS, and then I want to add a padding here. So instead of writing var space, I'm just going to write space, and then those come out, and then I choose that and apply all. So you don't have to remember how to type the variable. So you just, write it. And then if I go up here to the section, I want to add maybe the gap. So I want to use space. So I can use space M. So instead of writing var bracket dash dash, all those waste of time, you don't need to do it. And then for the background, if I want to add maybe a background of base, so I can just type base, and then it gives me that background. Now let's go back to the external style sheet. In order to open a style sheet, at least you have to first of all have one. The good thing is Recoda Workspace has a shortcut to create a style sheet. So I'm going to hit G, and then I'm going to hit / my new style sheet. So hitting / and typing whatever you want to type creates a new style sheet with that name. And the beautiful thing is that you notice I did not even care to add dash in between these words, because if you try to add a style sheet in Oxygen without closing in the spaces with dashes, it's going to throw an error. It's not going to do it. But Recoda Workspace just does that and creates a new style sheet and automatically adds those for you, and then that style sheet is open. But I don't want to use the style sheet inside here. I want to use the external style sheet. So I'm just going to go out from there, and then I want to open my new style sheet. Notice that my class here is my card, so I want to open a new style sheet, and there is my new style sheet. So I'm just going to write my card. That was, so it suggests, you can see that it suggests the class name that you already have. So if you did not even remember what it was, you see, what it does is that it gives you a suggestion based on, so I have a class called my tab in my installation. I have a class called my card. So it just suggests the classes for you. And another thing that I'm going to quickly demonstrate is code completion, suggestions of variable and all that. So now I want to give that a border. So you see all those things. These are features of Recoda. So even if you're working inside your own code block, it gives you the suggestions for all the properties and all the CSS variables. So if you have any utility class, it's going to automatically pull in all the variables for those utility class and present them to you when you are writing. So I want to go to border radius. There's a radius utility class in automatic CSS. So I'm just going to write -- radius. So you can see now here, if you type just radius, it might not come out because it doesn't want to confuse it with a normal CSS property. It doesn't want to keep, suggesting because you are not in a field. Now, if we go into a field like this, it detects that you are in a field, so you don't need to add the -- so you just type radius. Obviously the border radius input field probably is a bit problematic because that should work. Let me see if I come in here and write radius, so you can see that it gives me all the variables. So if I come in here to write space, it gives me all the variables. So something is probably off with this border radius field, and maybe in the upper version, the newer versions Recoda will hopefully fix that. If I go in here and type -- radius, because when you are inside the style sheet, you need to tell it put the -- okay, so that it will know that you're trying to get a variable. So I can now get that radius. So I want the radius medium. Now notice that as I have applied that radius, I'm going to go back here and you see that it is added. I didn't even need to save it. It just updates automatically. I'm going to give it a background. Oh, so I didn't close that. So I'm going to give that a background color of, even though I've already given it a background color, let me see if this is going to overwrite it. So if I do -- primary, now it's going to give me, so I'm going to take primary ultra light. Now see that it saves me the time of having to type out all this. So now let's just confirm that it's working. So I'm just going to say -- secondary. So I'm going to take secondary medium and then let me check that out. So let's go to the background settings. So obviously that does not override the one in the settings. So I'm just going to take that out. Okay, I'm going to take out the background color from there, and then I'm going to come back here and just apply that background color again. So -- primary ultra light. So I'm just going to put there and then go back. You can see that it applies that primary ultra light. If I don't want that, I can change it to secondary ultra light. You see it changes to secondary ultra light, which is actually a better color that matches this background. So I'm not going to waste time on that. I'm going to quickly go here, and now if I right click and see you have this copy and this context menu. This is from Recoda, so you can actually copy and paste. So I'm just going to copy this, and then I'm just going to paste it here and also paste it here. I think I'm going to copy this too and paste and paste. So it has that that context menu you can use. So copy this, paste and paste. So what I want to do now is to give this heading a class, because I did not give this heading a class before. So I'm just going to give this heading a class. I'm just going to, now one thing is that you don't even need to move your mouse. You just hit the letter G and just type my parag or my P. I'm just going to call it my P. Now that class is added. But then if I decide that I want to add that class to all these other ones, these two don't have that class because I had already duplicated it. I can simply click Shift and just click on it, and automatically it adds that class that I just added to it. So the same thing with this. So if I hit G and just say, oh, that was supposed to be my heading, not my, this was what I meant to be my pivot. Let me just say my text, and then I'm going to click, and then this has a class of text. And so I can hold down Shift and click here to give that same class to it. So I'm going to just give this button a class of my button. I'm going to just style that button, give that. And then if I shift click this, you can see that it adds that class to this button, even after I have styled it. So this is really powerful. So I'm going to go ahead and just, reduce this font size. And then if I go back to the style sheet and write my, so you can see all the classes that start with my shows up, and I just pick the P, and I'm going to quickly add a color to it. And if I say that color is going to be, say, accent, so I'm just going to say -- accent, and then that comes up, and I just hit tab and it changes to var accent. And I'm going to go back. You can see that that changes. So it auto syncs. Now, when you're done, you can now save it. So once I save it, it's going to automatically save the style sheet. So you really don't need to do anything about the style sheet. Just save this. That style sheet is going to save automatically. And when you close your document, the style sheet will automatically close. So let's take a look at more things you can do with the command line. So I have these here, and I'm going to add, I want to add an attribute, say, to this card. So I want it to have a data attribute. So I'm just going to quickly hit G. Now to add an attribute, you just write it the way you write it inside a CSS, but with a simpler form. So I'm just going to add this square bracket and just write maybe data ID is equals to my card. And then I close it and hit enter. Now if you come here, you're going to see that it has created that variable. If I want to add this same variable to the others, I think it's safe to say I can click shift. Now if I click here, you can see that this one don't have, but if I press shift and click on it, you can see it applies that variable and also applies that variable to did I say variable? Data ID to it. So I keep calling it variable. Sorry about that. And also I can, let me do the same for here. So you select a word and just hit G and type, whatever attribute you want to give. So I'm going to call it my heading and hit enter. And of course I have my heading here. So I hold down shift and click these two, and then they're all going to have the same data ID. Let's say I have this text now, and this text is P, but I want to change the tag to a div. So I don't want it to be a P, I want it to be a div. So I'm just going to quickly hit G to focus on the line, and then I'm going to put a single quotation mark and just write div. And it's automatically changed the tag. So that is, it changes the tag to whatever you want. So that changes the tag of this from div to from paragraph to a div. I'm just quickly going to hold down shift and click these other ones to apply the same. Now you can see why working with Recoda is addictive. Like once you are in this, you can't go back. You don't want to go back. It's crazy. Once your workflow get accustomed to this, you can work so fast. Everything is fast. You can do everything in just like that. Let me quickly take a look at which other. Yeah, so there are other ones. You can rename an element. You can change the content. Yeah, I've already said you can add a style sheet. You can add a folder for the style sheet. And then these are other very useful. Yeah, this is for the tag. This is for duplicate. I've done this. Now let's look at the renaming of element and changing the content. Now I'm going to select this block, and then I want to change the content. Of course, it's easy to just type here. I mean, this is optional. You can always type, but also you can always just say, this is my new content, and then close it with a curly braces, and then it's going to change it. And the good thing is that if I hold down shift and click here, it does the same thing. You see, this is crazy. This shift click to repeat the action is some really crazy stuff. So I come here to this button and I want to change the content. I hit G, open the braces and say my button, and then close it and hit enter, hold down shift, click here, and then it just changes that. It's on another level. And the next one is to rename. So I have this element, this card, and I've not renamed it. So I need to rename this. So I hit the G and press the @ symbol and say my cards, okay, and just hit enter. So you can see that it changes the name to my card. And then if I hold down shift and click on this, it changes these ones to my card too. How cool is that? Say I want to add another section, so I'm just going to hit G. Now G always does. I like the fact that there is a shortcut for it, so you don't have to bother to move your mouse because one of your hands is always on the keyboard when you're working. So you just hit G and start typing. So I'm just going to add a section. Greater than sign says inside that section add something. So inside that section I'm going to add a div, And then inside that div, I'm going to add 3 divs. I'm going to say div with a class of inner div, okay? But I want 3 of them times 3. Now I want to go back to this div and add something again, because if I click this, it's going to add it inside one of these divs. So I want to go back, so I use that symbol, and that says go up back to the parent and then add another div, so or something. So I'm going to add heading h1 in the parent, and then I'm going to add paragraph. But I want that paragraph to have an ID of my paragraph, and also have a class of my paragraph. So you can see that I have this. Now, if you know what you want to do, it's very easy to just quickly do it. So I have a section with a div, and inside that div, I have a div with a class of inner div, but I need 3 of them. Did I put plus there? That should have been times. So I multiplied that. So that was wrong. And then I go up 1 level above this div that I just added, and then go back to this div and then add a paragraph with, an ID of paragraph and a class of my paragraph, an ID of my paragraph, class of my paragraph. So I'm just going to hit enter, and then it's going to create that. So you can see that it creates this div section, and then creates a div, and creates another div and gives it inner div class, but there are 3 of them. And then it goes back to the parent, okay, because it didn't create this heading inside this. So it goes up again to the parent, and then add a heading, and then add a paragraph with an ID of my paragraph and a class of my paragraph. So if you're working with, say, you're taking a design from Figma to Photoshop, you're already seen the layout, so you know exactly what you want. So instead of coming here, let's do that thing what we just did. So instead of coming here to add a section and then add a div, and then we're going to add another div, and then maybe we add a class of let's say my new class or my class, and then we have to duplicate that 1, 2, yep, and then we come back here, and then we add a heading, and then we add a paragraph, and then we go back, and then you struggle with the oxygen's ID selection to change it to to new ID. And then after that, you're going to click again to add a class of new class. Now, I don't know which one you think is faster, but I believe that if I had seen the section that I wanted to create, that using the timeline or using the command line is a much faster way. It's super fast. Let's say I want to add a section and automatically rename it. So I just hit G and type section, then I type at hero section. I'm not quite sure if I'm supposed to leave that space there, but let's try it. It created a section and renamed it to hero section. Let's say I needed another section. So I'm going to hit G and write section at hero section. And then I want it to have a class, okay, hero section. And then I want it to have an ID of hero. So we have a section that has been renamed to hero section with an ID of hero and with a class of hero. Let's say we wanted to add a div inside there. So I'm just going to say div. And then I want it to be called inner wrap. But I want it to have a class of inner wrap, and I want it to have an ID of inner underscore wrap. Let's say I also want to change the tag, so I want it to be input, and then I also want it to have an attribute. So I'm just going to give it data ID of input. And I'm going to hit enter. Now let's take a look at that. So it's here. Okay, yeah. So I mean, these are random stuff. So you can see automatically this is an input. So if you go here, you can see that it has the tag of input. It has the data attribute of input. The name has been renamed to inner wrap. It has an ID of inner wrap, and then it has a class of inner wrap. So you can imagine how powerful this is. Now I'm barely scratching the surface. Okay, so let's move on to some other thing. So if you take a look at the right panel, you can see that this is the default Oxygen's structure panel the way it looks. But if I'm using Recoda, I would usually prefer the structure panel, the interface. So my structure panel style, I like the classic Recoda. So I love it this way. You know, so if you have a lot of elements, you can increase the indentation. So let's say I'm expanding all this, and then maybe there were a lot of nested divs inside that continues to push this aside. So I can go into that and check my indent. So let's go to that. So structure indentation is 1 now. So if I reduce it, you see, you can move. So I can take it all the way. So you have enough room for the elements. So normally these things are usually go in, a lot of them go in this much, but you can change this indentation, and then you can reduce give the default width for these panels. So if you want this panel to be big, this one to be big, the default, that's like a default, you can do that. But by default, they are usually 350, 350. So personally, I like keeping this at 300 and keeping this at 350. But I want to also let you know that these are, you know, they are, you know, you can size them. But once you get to that point where it marks red, it will snap. Okay, you can actually double click to bring it back. You can double click to hide it. But then, of course, you have the tap the space bar to go into full screen mode. Now let's look at the structure panel. I'm going to go ahead and add a couple of elements. So I'm going to select this card and then hit G and just write CB. Now CB is going to add a code block, and then I'm just going to add an image plus IMG. So that add a code block and an image. So I just want to have different stuff there. So I'm going to copy this code block and paste here. I think I'm going to go in here and paste this code block. I'm going to copy this element, this image, and put it here too. Now, so I have that image there also. Now, imagine you have a lot of things, and then you are looking for your code block. So you want to keep going to where you have a code block. There is a filter here that can just filter and shows you only the code blocks in the canvas you're working on, or it can show you only the images. You can combine them, of course, images and code block, but it can show you just the images, so you can quickly find what you're looking for. If I'm looking for only the headings, if I'm looking for only the paragraph, rich text, there's no rich text. If I'm looking for just the buttons, you can see there is a filter. If I'm looking for only divs, you can see that I can see just only the divs. So this is very, very powerful. Now, there's one more thing that I must have skipped when I was, you know, dealing with this. So I'm going to open a style sheet. So I have my new style sheet here. When you are working with Oxygen, of course, a lot of times you want to write media queries. So you can quickly, now having to always write at media, sometimes you miss the spelling, you know, and screen. Personally, I skip that and screen and go straight to maximum width. Let's say 6, 7 pixel. And then you come out and do that, open and close. Now, that is the old way of doing things. The new way of doing things is if you're in Recoda and you need a media query that is less than this, you just right click it and it copies it and just paste it. And then it gives you that media query and it writes it out for you, you know, perfectly. So let's say I need a media query less than this. I just right click it and paste there. So what if I need a media query greater than this? I'm going to hold down Control because all these are maximum width, maximum width. That means less than. So I'm going to hold down Control and click on it. And then I'm going to have my minimum width media query. So it's easy. So I'm just going to, so if you want something to affect just this, I'm going to hold down Control, click and paste a minimum width of 1600. That is so cool. So you don't ever have to type out these media queries again. And then one other thing is, let's go back to the panel and you can see that if you click here, it shows you all the styles that is being used. So it's a style inspector. So if I click on this, okay, yeah, you actually have to click inside for it to update. So yeah, so I guess that can be improved in the future, but you can see what I'm talking about. So you have this. Unfortunately, we can't select this. And it would be nice if Recoda gave an option for us to select and copy this. But let's see how it goes. But this is just a cool feature to quickly have an overview of what style is being used. So instead of, now, why is this useful? Sometimes you have maybe a style on your button. I have a style here. I'm going to add a style on the, on the ID. So let me just do this. As you can see, it shows me the styles on the ID. And then when I select the class, it shows me all the styles on the class. So you can quickly just take a look at all the styles instead of going inside, especially if you had styles right inside here. You see those stuff, say 0, and then maybe you had another stuff here. Let's say translate. Let's say I had maybe 1, 1, 1. Now, if you're just looking at this, you have to go into all this and be looking for the styles, okay? Or you could just click this, go to the style inspector and check it out. Okay, you see, all right, this is the class. No styling on the class. Let's check the ID. Oh, I have a transform here, and I have a rotate and translate. At least you have an overview of what styling you have on your element. Now, another cool feature of Recoda is that you can actually customize your input. So let's say this is not the default input of Oxygen 4.0. If you go back to this is the default input. But Recoda takes it a bit further and just further expands it, just gives it a style. And in Recoda, you can set default values. So in my paddings, I usually set my paddings to rem. So if I hit 2, it's going to automatically change it to rem. So you see 2, it changes it to rem. And my font sizes, I also usually set them to rem. So if I need a font of, let's say 16, I do 1.6, and then it changes it automatically to rem. So that is another cool feature. You can actually set custom values for each of them. Under the settings here, you have the units, and for each of them, you can set the custom size for it. And it has what is called auto detection. And that is supposed to detect maybe when you type something like 20, but of course it's going to change it to rem because I said it to change to rem, but I want it to be percent. And if I type that percent, it automatically just changes it to the percent instead of that. So you can say, I can go ahead here and say 20 EM. Now, if I just type the EM, it automatically changes. I don't need to come here to change. There are a lot of, settings here that you can go through, and a lot of stuff. If we go out here, so it adds this option to reset the advanced settings. So I have all these styles here, and I decided I don't want any of them anymore. I just click and it removes all of them. You see, so I go back, everything is empty. It resets everything. That is really cool. And then if you have been bothered by this thing here, there's a nifty feature in Recoda that you can actually take that out. Yeah, that is under miscellaneous. Disable selector indicator shrink. If you enable it, if you click disable, okay, and of course it's going to turn off this thing if you don't need it. So I'm going to go ahead and just refresh. So now if I just add a section here and I quickly go there, you can see that if I style that section, let's say I'm giving it that, and that is gone, so that shows there. You see, it still shows you. So if I quickly add a class of my section to that, and then I style that, maybe give it a padding, let's say space XL, okay. Now you see, it still shows me that this has been styled by the class with the color, but it doesn't come out to hinder what I'm doing. This also shows. So if I do that and then I go to the ID and just put maybe another value there, see, now once I go there, it's going to show me the blue. So that's it. So that is another nice feature to have. Then one cool feature that I've been putting off is, now let me just add a div here, and that div, I'm just going to give it a color. So let's say accent. All right, I'm just going to give it an accent color, and you have the ability to just do that. You see what I'm doing? Do I need to tell you what it is? Blobs, 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 made easy. So you can do blobs. I mean, if you're skilled in how to do them, you can always do them. Okay. I am not skilled in doing blobs, but for some of you that, can do it, maybe you could use this and just do something really cool. So that is a nice feature also. And the last feature I hope that I'm going to talk about is how Recoda handles code block. So I'm just going to quickly add, I'm going to hit G and type CB, and then that has added a code block element. Once you have a code block element, you have a new addition here. It is called the Blockpad. So the Blockpad opens a code pane-like interface for you to work with. So you can actually expand it. So you have the PHP, the CSS, and the JS all in one view. You can double click here to go up. You can double click here to expand. You can double click here to expand. You can move them. So I want to work with the CSS here. And guess what? They all have those selections, those autocomplete. Let's say border. So you can have that. And then you can have space. So it gives me that. So all the code selections, the autocompletes are there. You have your JS file here. So you can quickly just see everything at one glance. And then when you're done, you just go back and it automatically saves the changes into your code block. So now if you're using the normal code block, you have to come here. I mean, how many times do you have to come here? Sometimes you click here and say, oh no, wait, I have to go back to PHP. Okay, I need to go back to, it's time consuming, okay? But you can use this and simply do what you want to do. That is another feature. I hope we haven't missed. Yeah, there are a lot of features. Yes, we have missed. So if you want to check out the features, just go in here and look at all the features here. You have the Stylesheet linking. We have done a couple of these. Add element, live server, structure panel filter, panelator, positions. You can panel docking. You can actually change this panel. Like you can actually move this panel onto the right side. So let's say I have my interface here and I want to dock my panel. So I can just turn it left. So you can see that this panel docks. So let me move that. So you can see that both of them come here. If I want to dock it left swap, you see, swaps that. So if you're the kind of person that likes working with all your panels on this side, it's cool. If you want to swap it and have this here and this here, you can also do that. So this is really, really powerful. This is so great. So check it out. Go to recoda.me and check it out. So you have the price in here. So click on buy and you get workspace. You have for 3 side is $89. All these are lifetime licenses. For 1,000 side, you have a $199, and then for 30 side and $149. The good thing is that you can always transfer the license. So if you use on 3 side and you're no longer working on the side, you can deactivate that license from one side and then move it to the next side. So if you can't afford this or this, you can just get this and then switch the license. So I'm going to put a link for this website in the description. It is not an affiliate link. This is a product I've used and I love so much. Actually, even if it were to be an affiliate link, that wouldn't be an issue because even the product that I have affiliate links are the product that I use and I love. And that's why I go ahead to promote it. So check out those other products. One is automatic CSS. The other one is motion page. Check them out in the description. And if you're using those links to buy these plugins, you're going to be doing me a favor at no extra cost to you. It's your own way of supporting the channel. So I thank you for that. So that's all I'm going to cover in Recoda Workspace. And one last thing before I go, I'm just going to give you a bonus. So if you double click on this class name, it copies that class. So if you need to use it maybe in a style sheet, I'm just confused. I'm not used to that. So I'm just going to turn off that swap. So if you need to use it in a style sheet, you can just copy that class and paste. Of course, it's not copying it with the dot. You have to add that dot. And in the same way, if you double click on the ID, it's going to copy the ID. So a lot of times you have issues with coming here to select the ID. Oh my God, I can't select. What is this? Click 2 times. But if you just, even if you double click here, it's going to, you see it's copied it. If the class is active and you double click here, it still copies that class. So this is a really, really neat feature. So check out Recoda, get it if you can, and it's going to change the way you work forever. And if you would like to check out other add-ons you can use with Oxygen, check out this video here about 4 free add-ons you can use with Oxygen Builder. Until next time, have a great day.